Welcome to the Geekcentric podcast, and welcome to our watch club for Marvel's Loki. You could be whoever, whatever you want to be, even someone good. I mean, just in case anyone told you different. What's up, Lokis, and welcome to Watch Club. My name is Nate, and in this week's episode titled The Nexus Event, we see some Loki self-love, we learn about Sylvie's haunted past, and we uncover a harrowing truth about the Timekeepers. But first, if you're joining us for the first time, this is Watch Club, our weekly review series, kind of like a book club, but way better. Keep in mind, we will be going into full spoilers for this series and the MCU in general, so if you haven't watched this week's episode yet, be sure to do so, and then come right back in a snap. Now, before we all fall in love with ourselves, let me introduce you to my wonderful group of Lokis we have joining us on the show today. First up, he's jumping through justifiably jagged jellifications of judicious jargon. He's just in time.
Oh, yeah. Nice. Judition, whatever that word was. I love it. I've heard it like 1,000 times on this podcast.
I mean, I've run out of J names. Judicious. Yeah, it's like judging because you're judging and you speak a lot of jargon. Anyways, joining us digitally through space and time, we have the conniving craven, king of colossal kinetic catastrophes, Kevin, the conqueror of cookies, Hudson.
Let's be honest, boys. If anybody was going to be into a twisted romantic relationship, it would definitely be me. I would definitely date myself.
If he had a sister, he'd already be married to her.
Oh my God. Okay, guys, come on now. And listen, last but certainly never least, joining us for his Watch Club and Geekcentric debut, plucked from one of my branching timelines, we have the maniacal, mythical, masterful, meticulous, and Machiavellian minister of meandering, the mischievous and miraculous Matthew of Midgard Rona. How are you doing today, Matt?
Oh, very good. I'm happy to be on the pod.
There you go. Long-time listener, first-time guest host, I guess. Is that correct?
There we go. Yeah, absolutely.
Very cool. Matt, listen, I know you as a friend from work, but for our listeners who haven't had the pleasure of hearing your voice, would you mind telling them briefly who you are and maybe when you fell in love with Marvel?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just really a friend from work, and you know, I love movies. Love pop culture, so you know this podcast has been highly entertaining for me based on that alone. And for me, I don't know, I fell in love with Marvel when I fell in love with Spider-Man. So I grew up on a heavy diet of Spider-Man, right from like the, you know, like that 70s style sarcastic Spider-Man all the way into, you know, like Spider-Man comics, then X-Men, and you know, just really got into comics.
And then emo dancing Spider-Man is your favorite?
Oh, I mean, I think that was the first time I had to cover my eyes.
Yeah, 100%. And you know, I'm so stoked for what's to come with Spider-Man. Matt, have you looked into or seen anything regarding No Way Home? What do you think about what the next Spider-Man chapter?
You know, I think it seems like the multiverse and Spider-Man are set to collide, right? I think. You know, the Miles Morales movie really sort of, I think, almost sort of set a bit of a template for what's going on in Marvel at large.
It's cool. It's really interesting to see how, like Sony, specifically Sony Animation, could have maybe kicked it into high gear for Marvel to say, okay, you know what? We need to get moving on this. So I like that idea. But listen, before we get into this plot and trap our listeners in an endless time loop of our favorite memories from this episode, let's actually take a time door to the past, maybe into a section of the timeline from maybe last week. As you may or may not know, my two regular fellow hosts were sucked through a time door of their own and were unable to share their thoughts on last week's episode. So really quickly, from Justin and Kevin, before I prune you, what did you think of last week's episode? Kevin?
it just fell a bit flat for me. It was probably my least favorite of the first 3 episodes. I just thought there was, while there were great action sequences throughout the episode, the times when it was a bit slower, it was really, really slow. And I didn't necessarily take a lot out of the information we were getting in those kind of lull periods. And then there were also some character decisions that bothered me. And I think I came out of it thinking, this episode was just okay, unless some of these character decisions going on through the series have a payoff.
Right.
And then I might feel completely different about the episode. And so, we're now a week later and I'm like, do I feel differently about last week's episode? Maybe we'll just have to discuss that as we go along.
For sure.
I'm definitely on the same wavelength as Kevin. The episode last week was fairly, it was slower in comparison to episodes 1 and 2. However, I think that some of the character elements that kind of took place in that, they're going to matter more, and I think we do see them matter more in this episode right off the bat. That being said, though, I was thinking, like, if I were to rate that episode, I'd probably would have given it a 3.5 out of 5. Who knows? This episode could matter or could kind of reveal more in episodes 5 or 6, but who knows? Maybe that's just us hoping, but I don't know. We'll see.
Interesting. Okay. Well, listen, we're all caught up now. So let's actually start with a brief overview of your high-level thoughts on this week's episode. Matt, because you're joining us for the first time, can you give us your thoughts on this episode and starting off with the series so far, your thoughts on Loki?
Well, I mean, I think this is the MCU series that's blown me away the most so far. I mean, I enjoyed the other ones. It's all good content, great actors, amazing production. But this one, I don't know, this one as a series feels like it's part of the MCU in a really different way. And maybe it's because of how much I consider Loki a core character, but really like all of the feel of it, like even from like the set pieces to just the feel of it, it really does sort of, it fits in almost at a different level for me. So I've loved the series so far. I'm with you guys on the last episode was, I don't know, it's one of those ones where like, having watched this one, if I binged it, I probably wouldn't have cared. I would have been like, oh great, like that set up this episode so well,
right.
No problem. But like watching them weekly and dissecting them, it felt slow and I missed Owen Wilson. I was like, oh, like a whole episode without Owen Wilson? Like, what are you doing to me?
Wow.
But this episode, like when I finished watching this episode, it's like, oh my God, like I'm psyched to be talking, like this is the episode I get to talk about.
I know,
I was like, if I had to talk about the last episode, I don't know if I would have been a great guest.
That's why Justin and I just said, you know what, Nate, you take it.
No, you got sucked through a time door, Kevin.
So this episode's just been, like it's just so packed. I think it really does pay off for the last episode.
Very cool. Justin, how about yourself?
Yeah, no, Matt brings up a really great point. Like, if you were to binge this series, that episode probably wouldn't have stood out as such a sore thumb of being lackluster, if you will, in terms of, but because it is this weekly sort of, we're diving in and we're discussing, it definitely draws more apparency to it that it is just a filler episode and that it, was slower. That being said, this episode was a huge payoff for all the things that we got and new mysteries that are established. Episode 4, 2 episodes left, and there's new questions, new things to be asking, and I think in classic MCU fashion, while we'll get some answers, we're not going to get them all. It'll be the thread that pulls us into other movies and connects us and connects this phase 4, if you will. But it was a very exciting episode, to the point I actually I tend to watch these episodes once and just do these reactions with you guys and think about as we go through the plots. But I actually rewatched this one because I really enjoyed it. So
very cool. Kevin, how about yourself, my friend?
I definitely enjoyed this week a bit more than I did last week's episode. And I do think that it did answer some questions that should have been answered last week in terms of characters. I think they almost opened some doors, especially for Sylvie's character, that they basically just said, nah, it's none of that. This is the truth here, right? And so I think that was almost like a waste of a time when you only have 6 episodes to work with.
Right.
And there was one thing that I'll get into eventually that bothered me throughout the episode, but otherwise I thought it was fantastic. And they progressed the plot and gave us so many answers while not necessarily posing questions, but saying, and this is what's going to be next.
Right.
And it was so great. And that mid-credit scene and just going, oh, why couldn't that have happened in episode 2 so we could get 4 episodes of this, of what's to come rather than only 2? But I mean, again, if you're making me want more of something, you're doing your job right. So I think it was a great episode this week.
Very cool. Yeah, like I agree with all of you. This week's episode hit much more for me because I think last week's episode's pacing felt so off.
Yeah.
And so I actually enjoyed this a lot because it, honestly, much like the first episode, it felt very much like a movie. We got backstory, we got betrayal, we got huge revelations about a few characters, and then we're left with a few characters' fates, sort of left to mystery. So all of that I think of a Marvel movie when I think of all of those factors. So it really, really worked for me, and it gave me exactly what I needed and then some. And I know that, to what you're kind of mentioning, Kevin, like some could argue that it gave some stuff up a little bit quickly, but unless we get a second season, it makes sense because we only have 2 more episodes left. So it makes sense for them to speed up some of these developments that, usually I would be in the camp of saying, like, they're going too fast, like slow down with your character development. But I was actually really okay with it, and I think it felt natural and it felt needed for sure. But guys, let's not waste any more time. They say time is money. So without further ado, let's get into this plot. A pristine Asgard opens the episode where a young Sylvie plays with a toy ship in the palace. The peaceful moment is quickly interrupted with the appearance of Minutemen entering through a time door. A younger Ravonna, as Hunter A23, is among them and personally takes Sylvie back to the TVA. Young Sylvie goes through the new variant process, as we saw with Loki in the first episode, right down to her presentation in front of a judge. But then, Sylvie pulls a quick one, stealing Ravonna's tempad and hopping through a time door. Cut to present day, where we see Ravonna enter the chambers of the Timekeepers through the golden elevator door, and we see the 3 of them sitting there on their thrones, shrouded in darkness. So, what a way to open this episode. I need to know, what were your immediate thoughts on actually seeing the Timekeepers, and why do you think Sylvie was originally captured by the TVA? Matt, let's start with yourself.
It's a great question. One thing that stood out to me, and maybe it's a small thing, but Sylvie's hair as a child was like much darker, I'm like, oh, that's what I expected from Loki. So I don't know if that's a thing or not, but I was like, oh, interesting that she's blonde when she gets older. So that stuck out to me. And I've got some theories about why she was taken. I don't know if you want me to go into them now. I might put a pin in that.
Nate will make you put a pin in it and say, save it for the end.
Well, I mean, if it's a big juicy theory, if you've got a couple of things you'd like to share, you sprinkle it through. Yeah.
Like, I think that's the $1 million question right now about with this episode, even though it's the first thing that we kind of see, is what was her Nexus event, which will be a question that'll be asked later, right? I love the interesting sort of like speed up of her being processed. Like, we've already lived through that experience of what it looked like, and to see another Loki go through it just kind of hammers this idea that this is something that Lokis go through, right? Like that these variants will experience. I also caught the hair thing too, but then when I watched it on the second time, in Asgard, her hair is fairly dark, but then when she gets into the courtroom and she has the tempad and she's about to leave, you can see it's a lot like, it's a dark brown with like little blonde highlights. And I was like, that's okay. Okay. Now I'm seeing it, but it was interesting that I didn't, like, at first I noticed that it was very dark and it looked very Loki. And I was like, well, are they going to explain why she changed her hair? If that was like some way of like her having her own identity.
That's what I was going to say, Justin. Yeah. I think honestly, like, unless to what you're describing is like she's being affected by jumping through time doors, and that's what happens to someone's hair if they jump through enough time doors. I don't know, but
in short,
yeah.
I think it was just a lighting thing in the way
Yeah.
that scene was lit and like colorized versus when she
so.
gets in the courtroom. A lot more lights above her, and you can
Yeah.
really start to see like there's just a little bit more color. So
But I
don't know.
do think it's her establishing her own identity.
Sure,
Definitely,
yeah.
definitely cutting it. You know, she doesn't want to be a Loki. Matt.
It just sort of dawns on me, like, so maybe, you know, this show's so focused, obviously, on Loki's, and she's been running from the TVA for so long, and the TVA's seems like they just go after countless numbers of Lokis. Like,
Right.
I wonder what her awareness of like other Lokis really are, and is that like, is the blonde hair, is her being called something different because she doesn't want to be associated with those other Lokis, or, you know, like, or is there some impact or experience she's had with Lokis that has yet to be revealed?
Yeah, because she definitely has a disdain for Lokis even before she really gets to know our Loki, right? So I can, wow, interesting.
Yeah, she was
okay.
already aware of him in that
Yeah.
shopping mall scene. So yeah, I totally think that there is some sort of existing relationship between her and seeing another Loki of some kind. So,
And like just going back to like, you know, her in Asgard, seeing Asgard, first of all, looks gorgeous. I miss it since the destruction in Ragnarok. I wish we could have it back. Maybe we do get it back in some way. But I feel like, you know, this situation where she was arrested for being a goddess, you know, that didn't really fit with what the timekeepers wanted for their sacred timeline.
Oh, I see.
So I'm confused here because, like, you know, was she originally the real Loki, and then everything got changed to input the Loki we know into the sacred timeline because maybe she's too heroic. You know, you hear her when she's being dragged through the doors, and she sees that guy that the
Someone
TVA
help
agent
him.
kind of
Yeah.
has, right? She's like, someone help him.
Yeah.
She's like
I
freaking
noticed
out.
that.
She doesn't care about herself. She's
Yeah.
like, someone help that guy. And they made that a very clear point. So she's so different from our Loki because of that. And so maybe Lokis are supposed to be bad guys, and that's just the way that the timekeeper or whoever they are want their timeline.
I think you're onto something. So she was basically apprehended because she was a good guy and not a villain.
Right.
Essentially.
It's almost
Yeah.
like to get the Thor that they need that foil. You
right.
know?
Oh.
And
Yeah.
maybe Lokis are actually good people.
Well, that's
knows?
pretty juicy for right off
Listen,
the bat.
Yeah, I thought you were
Geez,
saving these ideas.
I mentioned we can sprinkle things in if we want to. So
God.
listen, I'll let you guys sprinkle stuff along as long as you have something to say for the end, Kevin.
Well, I'll just jump in and answer your second question about actually seeing the timekeepers.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And for me, as soon as I don't know, it's kind of been like, can these specimen that you're talking about, these unbelievable, more powerful than the Infinity Stones, could they really just be an elevator shaft away? That always
Right.
seemed kind of cheesy to me.
Yeah.
And so as this is all playing out, and then later in the episode, I was like, I really enjoyed how they've done that aspect of it. I was very
100%.
happy. Yeah. Because, I mean, if that was going to be a legit thing and we just see these glowing red eyes in the smoke, and it was so cheesy and over the top in a great
Right.
way because of how it pans out. If it was legit, I don't know, man. I might not be tuning into episode 5.
Yeah. Well, they like, again, they are real characters, especially in the comics, and I think with everything that Phase 4 is meant to reveal, who knows if they were in existence and someone took them out. Do you know what I mean? Like, we're jumping ahead.
Oh, I'm totally on board with the timekeepers being a thing, but 3 Snokes sitting in a cloudy room is not how I want that to actually exist in this universe. And so I'm glad, you know, like I said, Wizard of Oz. That's totally what this is. And I think there's even more to it that we'll discuss as we go.
Who's the character that we're going to see in What If?
Is he called the Watcher?
Yes, the Watcher. I got Watcher vibes from
me
that room and that look and that sort of pedestal, even very Thanos.
All right, I'm opening the predictions floodgates. You guys can say whatever you
Oh,
want. 'cause
wait, hold on.
That's what
I
this
gotta brace
episode.
myself.
That's
I
what this
gotta brace
episode
myself.
is. I'm telling you right now. But no, I just need to shout out really quick because you mentioned the Watcher. We mentioned the Watcher on our last podcast with Daniel Baptista from the Movie Podcast, and we were talking about, you know, who is that mailman that Sylvie was talking about. Well, one of the characters that we've seen in canon interact with the Watchers is Stan Lee. And so, while I don't think it's Stan Lee necessarily behind all this, there could be that thread and that through point, and maybe that was a little bit of foreshadowing. But listen, let's keep moving on here. We then see Ravonna return from her conversation with the Timekeepers as Mobius asks her if she's okay. She tells him under the best of circumstances it's jarring to stand before the Timekeepers, and that they blame her for the mishandling of the 2 Loki variants that could have attacked them. Mobius attempts to calm her down and asks to speak with Hunter C-20, to which Ravonna, while asking him to keep it a secret, tells him she can't speak with him because she's dead. Then, back on Lamentis, as rocks plow through the planet and the world literally crumbles around them, Loki and Sylvie completely put their distrust and grievances behind them as they face their impending doom. Sylvie gives Loki a rundown of her abduction by the TVA and explains how she was on the run after her entire reality was erased, saying the universe wants to break free, so it manifests chaos, which is what she says, of her own creation, giving credence to the nefarious goals of the TVA. Realistically, Sylvie doubts their survival, but Loki reassures her that a Loki will often lose, but a Loki will always survive. Off in the distance, we do see a massive rock slam into the ground, creating a speeding wave of debris in all directions. The two embrace for the impact and hold each other close, causing an unusual Nexus event that gets picked up by the TVA. The two are located, and 2 convenient time doors pop up, ready for escape as they're captured and thus rescued from the destruction of Lamentis 1. So, guys, this seems kind of weird, and I know, Kevin, you kind of wanted to talk about this because you said you would date yourself. When you look at it in different contexts, it seems kind of odd, but I got to ask, with the love blossoming between Sylvie, is that what caused this Nexus event?
The love that shall not be named. In other words, the taboo-esque sort of
Self-love?
romance going on here.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever seen a character in television or movies that was going to fall in love with themselves.
It was Loki.
Loki is the one to do it. That works for me.
Honestly, I think that they've foreshadowed this enough that is the Nexus event, that their alignment and their coming together is that we've, even the fact that Loki established that in an apocalyptic period, depending on the variation, nothing could be detected. But this was so big that this caused a Nexus event among an apocalyptic scenario. So, I think they've done a really great job foreshadowing it to really cement that this is impactful and it means something. That being said, I don't really know if it's as much of a romantic as much as it is endearing and an alignment. I don't know. I get that there was some touchy eye sort of stuff, but I don't know. It's hard to see that that's where they might go with it, unless they discover that she's not actually a Loki. But
oh my God, there's so much there. A, she's 100% a Loki. B, that is all love. That's what Mobius preyed on, was his genuine affection for this guy, and not a little sister or a best friend. That was romantic
he exploited
love.
It,
The first rule of time travel is always you can't encounter yourself or else it screws everything up. So the fact that these two have not only encountered themselves, but they're working together, and now maybe even more. Of course, that's going to be the biggest spike they've seen. I think. I think that's what's coming out of that.
And that's what I mean, right? I think that's the bigger thing for me, rather than necessarily this exploration of them actually having a relationship. I get that that's what they were hinting at, and to your point, what Mobius kind of pulls at Loki to kind of get to him later in the episode, but. Again, it's hard to get a read on it really, other than just what's really been discussed based on this episode. So I don't know.
I need to ask though, is this really Loki loving himself? Because here's the thing, I don't really see Loki and Sylvie as the same, right? We've already talked about, Sylvie's very different from Loki, and so I think the part that he's attracted to is the fact that she is different from him, that she does have that commonality. They have that similar understanding of being someone that maybe wasn't wanted, or maybe someone that was forgotten or lost. And so I think that's where that attraction starts, but I think it ends with her being so different.
It's still just falling in love with a better version of himself, though, right? It's still there.
Yeah. I agree. I think he is in love with himself, and like I think they went for it.
Like, you guys are obviously making that argument that it's definitely a love attraction, and it makes sense again for Loki's character that would exist because he's such a narcissist, right? Like he's so into himself, and he's proven that even throughout the season as a reminder. So it is very like the groundwork is laid there for something that could be romantic. But I feel like, is that just not like, a romance causes a Nexus event? Like, I don't know.
I think there's more to it than the romance.
Exactly, yeah.
But I do think that I love that for Disney, I know it's Marvel, but like for Disney to go there, I thought that was awesome.
Yeah.
I was like, they're just gonna go there.
It's a bit out there for sure. But I do want to say the one thing that stood out in the sequence you just described between the couple scenes there, and it's a theme throughout the episode for me. Ravonna has now become my least favorite character in the entire MCU just because of her actions in this episode. Like, as an audience, we've had seeds planted where something is a little awry with the TVA. That's what we're supposed to think. And then in this episode, obviously, they keep hammering in on that, and we're getting more and more suspicious. Her character was the most obvious bad guy trying to hide something I've ever seen in my life. Like, her acting was bad. The way they had her character talk to Owen Wilson, to Mobius, like, it was so on the nose that it felt cheesy to me. And it happened throughout the whole episode. Everything that was obvious, they like hammered it in. It's like, we get it, guys. We get what's going on here.
I think it's purposeful, but I think the reason you feel that way, I think they're going to change your mind before the end of the series. Bro. I think something. We'll get to it. But I also just really want to shout out Owen Wilson. Unfortunately, he still hasn't gotten to drop. How? But he did. Yeah, he did. He dropped the how, and I was like, that was everything for me. That was everything. All right, back at the TVA, Sylvie is taken in one direction, and Loki is sent back to the original questioning room with Mobius. Without much discussion, Mobius tosses Loki through a red time door, even after Loki yells at him, telling him the TVA is lying. This time loop of a bad memory sees Sif, the Asgardian warrior from the first two Thor movies, enter the room with a fistful of her own cut hair before smacking Loki around. Whatever trick Loki pulled to cut her hair leads her to tell him he deserves to be alone, an insult he cares greatly for after repeated runs of the loop. By the end, Loki apologizes to Sif and claims he's a narcissist who seeks attention. A somewhat sympathetic Sif, helps him up, but then she stands firm on her view of him as a person. At this point, Mobius yanks Loki back to the questioning room, where he doesn't believe he has anything meaningful to say about his new TVA realization. Loki goes on into full-on deception mode, stating he was pulling the strings all along, having met with Sylvie long ago to devise a plan to take down the TVA. Mobius gets his own round of lies in by sharing that they've already pruned Sylvie, and you see the look of disappointment on Loki's face. Seeing his reaction, Mobius realizes that Loki has fallen in love for Sylvie and deems him the ultimate narcissist, saying that Loki has fallen in love with himself. How fitting.
Yeah, exactly.
The persistent teasing gets Loki to fold, and he screams out his secret. The TVA is made up of variants. All the workers are people plucked from throughout the timeline to do the timekeeper's bidding. Seeing as this comes from Sylvie and her ability to see into people's minds and memories, Mobius remains unconvinced and sends Loki away back to the dreaded Lady Sif time loop. So, guys, what did you think of seeing Jamie Alexander back as Sif? And what did you think of this form of TVA torture? Matt?
Well, I mean, I thought this scene was so good on so many levels. Like, so it's got, your elements of Groundhog's Day, right, where he's just reliving the loop and trying to find different ways to manipulate it. But, beyond that sort of comic element, it also, like, I thought it was really impactful. Like, so the first ones, he's getting kicked in the nuts, But then the last one where she helps him up, she doesn't kick him in the nuts. But when she tells him he's going to be alone,
it was worse than a kick in the nuts.
Yes. Like, it was way worse.
Yeah.
And, and you can feel that theme in this episode of like, is he going to be alone? Does he think he should be alone?
Yeah.
So, that scene, I thought it moved a lot of things along in a really entertaining way, really well.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, like Matt's right. Like there's again in this episode they are playing with that deception of, is it narcissistic love that's blooming here, or is it this sort of connectivity of him being not wanting to be alone, that he has that sort of connection with Sylvie. So I feel like this scene kind of captures that when she, as you said, looks at him and says, you'll always be alone, right? Like it's a reminder to him that, he doesn't really have anyone, especially being ripped from his own timeline. Like there's a parallel that the two share. So I think it was impactful on many levels rather than just his nuts. So
I think that's like almost one of the most interesting things about the character of Loki, not just in this show, but in the various arcs that we've seen him in. Like the Loki that we lose in Infinity War had gone through so much and had changed as a character and had grown, and the things that he does for his brother and his people and just in general, he was such a stronger character than the one that gets branched off from the first Avengers and that we start this show with. And in those first 2 episodes, they really sped up that process where he gets to see the things that he would have gone through, and it felt like he learned from that. And I think that was one of my biggest annoyances from the 3rd episode, was that he seemed to just regress to being a spoiled little Asgardian brat in that 3rd episode, and he made such bad decisions.
Yeah.
And so again, I hope that we see some sort of payoff to that before the end of the show. But then in this episode, he gets this other huge sort of lesson, this humbling experience. And, when he's on his knees groveling and then she says that to him and his eyes just die, and you always will be alone. Yeah. It's like, this might be an even deeper and more interesting Loki than we even had in the Infinity War era. So yeah, his character is so amazing.
No, for sure. And I think, you mentioned the brat Loki that we used to have, and so obviously Lady Sif had her run-ins with that Loki as well, and so seeing Jamie Alexander show up to play Sif, I thought it was super cool, and it speaks to the amount of characters that they can really play with, in the MCU. It's gotten to the point where, like in the comics, where if they keep, bringing in these fresh directors like Kate Herron and writers like Eric Martin and Michael Waldron, like they can do anything, right? They can do anything they want, and they can find a way to make it still fit within the timeline that we know from the films, and even within multiverses. So it's super cool, and I love that we already know that she's going to be back in Thor: Love and Thunder. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if I don't think this will tie into any of that, but it's just kind of cool to kind of see her again, getting us ready to see the character again. Yeah. I also really like this scene because, yeah, like you guys said, Tom Hiddleston's I can't. We talk about the acting for all these main characters in all these Marvel shows, but just this moment, him portraying how Loki feels in that moment. You see him going from his like normal pleading, conniving Loki at right away is like, he does the thing with his arms where he like puts them up in the note, and then he's just like, it's just cool because you see him go to that point where he understands what Mobius really wants him to say about himself, because he kind of knows like, this is just another Mobius thing, because Mobius is very much about Loki sort of self-improving, if you will.
Yeah, like you can almost feel it. He's not exhausted and tired of it because he keeps getting slapped in the face and kicked in the nuts. He is emotionally crippled. Like he cannot physically hear somebody say those words to him one more time. That's what's hurting him and getting harder and harder to take every single time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, on that, listen, meanwhile, Hunter B-15 is dealing with her own crisis after having an encounter with Sylvie and her powers in episode 2. B-15 is left confused and questioning her existence. B-15 enters the holding cell for Sylvie and takes her through a time door, returning to an apocalyptic hurricane back in 2050 in front of the Roxxon shopping center. And there, Sylvie explains she can't create memories, she can only access what is already there. B-15's memories are real, and then she's shown them, and then all of a sudden she's on board to help stop the TVA as she asks, what now? Mobius and Ravonna chat once again as they celebrate the upcoming pruning of the Loki variants. Mobius manages to switch the temp pads with Ravonna, and then in the library, Mobius watches an interrogation tape where he sees C-20, the supposed unable-to-speak commander that was kidnapped by Loki in episode 2, and in this recording, she speaks clearly about her realization that they are all variants. He's then most disappointed to see that it was Ravonna running the interrogation all along. Mobius has now decided to jump ship as well. A fully realized Mobius then enters Loki's time loop, and both of them team up once again, this time to take on the TVA, with Mobius asking Loki to trust him, telling him that he can be whoever he wants to be, even someone good. The two walk through the time door, kind of smiling a little bit, only to be confronted by a very stern-looking Ravonna waiting on the other end. The two confront each other, and Mobius plays dumb, but only for a moment. Then he tries to get through to Ravonna by telling her where he'd go if he could go anywhere, which was a question that she asked him earlier in the episode. And he mentions he would go to wherever he's from, and that maybe there he's got a jet ski. Without much hesitation, Ravonna orders the pruning of Mobius, and just like that, he's disintegrated. So guys, what do you think of, Hunter B-15? What do you think she saw that made her so willing to go against the TVA? And where did Mobius go? Is he gone forever? What do you think, Kevin?
I mean, she saw her own jet ski, whatever it was, sure. Right? And I think it was a family that she mentions,
that's
right?
I
want to
see.
Too, I want to see that family that I had before.
I think so. Well, she does. I think she just says like, "I'm so happy" or something like that.
Right.
And so I think you're right though. I don't think it was mentioned, but I do think she does see a family, because she doesn't really seem like the kind of person that forms much of a relationship with anyone in the TVA. So to see her so happy there, I don't think she saw herself alone and happy. I think she saw herself with her family.
Yeah, I think she saw the life that she had, that where she was happy, and that surrounding, right? Like, again, it's incredible that they've added this layer now to the TVA, where B-15, she's been set up as being the most committed TVA, right?
Yeah,
to the
exactly.
TVA, right? So like, to see her sort of turn like this, obviously what she saw and felt was very real and very visceral, that she comes back, a different person. She's woke, you know what I mean? Like, that's the term, right? So
yeah. I mean, as for Mobius though, like, we do know he comes back, spoiler, because there's some footage in trailers that we haven't seen yet. So assuming that they don't use all that footage in the show, then maybe not. But I think at least we'll get to see him riding a jet ski, and then maybe he's like pulled back into the chaos to save Loki and Sylvie. And he's like, oh wow, like I have to get off this jet ski or whatever. I don't know.
I mean, the only thing I'll say is, like, so obviously we find out more later about what getting pruned is all about. Mm-hmm. But when it happened, like, it took my breath away. I was what? Like, I'm like, I just went a whole episode without him, and he's finally back in my life. I just loved his banter, and you're going to prune him? I could not believe
it was a good point. It was a good point after he gave such a fatherly, brotherly sort of advice to Loki, that he steps through and that those actions happen. It was a bit
Obi-Wan
jarring.
moment right there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I'm honestly shocked here. Like, maybe it becomes more obvious towards the end of the episode, because we haven't gotten there yet in our little discussion here. But really, like, you guys thought he was gone when he got pruned? I mean, I think it was like giving like at the end of Infinity War. Did you really think they were all toast when they got dusted? I don't know. I thought, like, okay, there is something up with the prune. But you haven't had any underlying suspicions this whole time that pruning wasn't quite what they made it seem to be?
As sudden as it was, I would say that, yes, it was very jarring. Then after I thought about it as it was happening, and I was just like, no, he's going to come back, right?
And, I
think, but I don't think that's what was impactful about that moment.
It's the emotions.
What was impactful about that moment was seeing Loki's reaction, and that's what really hit me. And I hope we do. We'll definitely get to see him again. But how that happens, we'll have to wait and see. Both Loki and Sylvie are pushed through the gold elevators with Ravonna at their side, and Sylvie asks Ravonna, "What was her Nexus event? What was that?" Asking, what led to her life being erased, and what led to all of this, to which Ravonna responds by telling her she doesn't really remember. Then the trio walk into the Timekeeper's chambers, and the three gods begin to speak. They offer the two, a final few words before getting pruned. But this gives Sylvie a chance to deduce that the high beings floating in front of them are actually scared. Before things could proceed, B-15 appears at the elevator doors and in an amazing way and disables the time-controlling neck braces of the two prisoners. Then throws a sharp sword towards Sylvie. In a way like to hand it to her. A fight erupts, B-15 is knocked out, and the two variants fight off a bunch of guards, and Sylvie disables a very capable Ravona. As a final act of defiance, Sylvie throws the sword at the head of the center Timekeeper, chopping his head off, only to realize they're a group of fake, mindless androids. As Loki reassures Sylvie that, listen, they're going to figure it out. We can get to the answers here. He begins to sort of profess his feelings, if you will, and Ravona prunes him. And as he disappears, it cinematically reveals Ravona behind him. A very angered Sylvie pins down Ravona and demands that she tell her everything. And that is the end of the episode. Now, there is a post-credits scene, and we will get to that in our prediction section. We'll kick off our prediction section by talking about that. But first, what did you think of this incredible final sequence? And what does at least this part mean? Before the final end credit sequence. Clearly Ravona knows some degree of truth as to who the Timekeepers really are. But androids, who do you think is really pushing the buttons then? Anybody got any ideas?
Well, I mean, I have a theory on this. It's probably wrong, but I have a theory on this. So,
okay.
It's called Loki.
Mm-hmm.
And even back to that first question, I'm like, oh, well, who would be like upset about this child? And what motivation would there be? So I don't know. I'm going to go on a tangent here, but anybody ever watch, what's it called? Celebrity Rehab with Dr. Drew?
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
Like, in some ways, like, I'm like, this is just a big therapy session. And like Mobius is Dr. Drew, and he's been spending all of this time with all of the different personalities of Loki. And like this whole exercise feels like a big therapy session.
Right.
Like, how are we getting these cosmic Lokis, to sort of work through their issues with all of these different variants and variations, right? So, part of me goes like, okay, you know what? Maybe there's a Loki that won, and that Loki is keeping that timeline in place, and he is going after all the other Lokis, and everybody in the TVA is Loki's, and the reason her crime is, well, her parents told her early on that she was adopted.
Right.
So she's not going to have...
And she accepted it and just moved on.
So no daddy issues, no mom issues, no, none of those things, right? So like, and you could see how like a Loki might be like, what? Like, so jealous of the fatherly love that she was going to get, that she'd get along with Thor, like, and just the idea of somebody not having to suffer. Like, I could see the jealousy of that being so crippling that they would be like, I'm plucking you, like, that's not happening for you. And so to me, it's like my big thing is this might all actually be happening in Loki's mind. And I've got some more theories on this, but...
Whoa! Okay. We'll get to those. Kevin.
Last week, I actually sort of had a premonition or a feeling that this might be the case. And because of the time door I got sucked through, I wasn't able to share it with everyone. But I just want to go on record. I had that idea as well.
Interesting.
Yes.
Okay. But listen, I also wanted to just shout out something that has nothing to do with the crazy epicness that Matt just dropped on us. The set design in this scene was really cool. It was very reminiscent of like MC Escher. You got all these like stairs. And I think like visually, it's cool how they're telling a story with even the visuals, the location here, because I think it all does really mean something. And I think this scene and this MC Escher stairway, walls kind of alludes to the falseness of these characters in that, like, even destroying them, it feels like Sylvie isn't getting anywhere with her quest for answers. So it's like you're never going to get to your answers. I don't know. I think that's super cool.
I think the set design is, as you pointed out, it kind of like, by referencing that artwork, it feels very like, time and space are just endless. Do you know what I mean? And like, and it's like a very chaotic and confusing, which I think is another theme that they kind of play with the idea of time being very chaotic. The set design and the look of the space was really interesting. I don't know, like this use of red, the red door, the red magic.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying I'm not going. It reminds me of WandaVision, but I'm definitely not going down the Mephisto. But I feel I feel like the whole idea of the multiverse and the red association. Like, I don't know if they're trying to create some sort of an alignment with what we're seeing here. So those sort of things kind of jumped out at me as being, and even like the design. Like I was watching a YouTube video with Eric Voss, and he pointed out the same thing, saying it looks very similar to like when Wanda builds those like symbols in the sky, and she
the runes,
right, to protect herself when she's fighting. So like, could this be something that's like connected with that sort of power in that place? Who knows, right? But
interesting.
There's something else behind this, and I think that's what this scene and this whole setup here does really well. Is the audience thinks they're getting answers, and they sever the head of that, quite literally. Jeez. And then they plant new things that we can kind of explore. So it's gonna be interesting to see.
Now I'm gonna come back around to the craziness of who's behind all this, but I just also want to just mention, like, the fight at the end was fantastic. It was probably maybe my favorite fight sequence that I've seen, because you see them fighting, at least in this series, you see them fighting in tandem, and I just think that's so cool. Like, just showing off that they're Lokis. And as for Ravonna, I really have to wonder though, like, what's she still fighting for here? Because the fact that the timekeepers are robots, doesn't seem to faze her when she wakes up, or maybe she doesn't realize it when she wakes up because she's so focused on getting to Sylvie. But I think it's very possible that whoever is behind all this, that Ravonna actually has some sort of relationship with them. I don't think she's kept in the dark. I think she knows everything that's going on. She keeps discussing another agent that keeps coming through her office, and a lot of people saying, oh, maybe it's Kang the Conqueror, maybe it's the real Miss Minutes, because we know Tara Strong has mentioned in interviews that we haven't seen the last of Miss Minutes, so maybe there's some sort of element to Miss Minutes in this. I hope it's not just like a big AI at the end of this or something like that. But I have another. You know what? I have another thought. I'm going to save it for my predictions, though. I'm going to save it because it's similar to what Matt was talking about, but a little different. Kevin?
I got to give you guys credit because you totally swayed me on what bothered me in this episode. I'm convinced in another way now, and it's wonderful. I was really bothered by how just stupidly obvious Ravonna was this whole episode.
Yep.
And now it's obvious, like, yes, because she wanted him to know without being able to tell him. Okay, I feel like a dope now for not seeing it through the first time. And just to give real credit to this, the way this all played out, like, Marvel has made a raccoon and a tree be this convincing, beloved duo. They made a planet a believable, viable bad guy.
Yeah.
For them to take this super powerful entity and make them three cheesy dudes in a room, and it was like, that's not what's actually going on here. And so I love that obviously that's not what was going on, and so they hammed it up to the extreme, right? They made them like Chuck E. Cheese characters basically sitting in those chairs, and the payoff, it worked really well, I thought.
Yeah, you said it earlier when you said it was so Wizard of Oz, right? Like, it was classic, like, somebody needed to pull back the curtain. Mm-hmm. And even when you said earlier, like when you're talking about the Watchers or Thanos, it's like, we're used to in the MCU, like, if it's somebody of that significance, like, the set piece would be so much more dynamic and impressive and, have that wow moment. So, I mean, they you're right, hammed it up is right. Like, they set this up to be torn down.
Interesting. Cool. Well, listen, speaking of setting it up to tear it down, we're going to tear down the remainder of the podcast. We're wrapping up our discussion on the plot, and then we'll get to our predictions as well. But listen, let's get to our final thoughts on this episode, as well as your final score, which we're actually going to be ranking on a scale of 1 to 5 Loki variants. Matt, let's start with you.
I mean, This is the only episode in the MCU TV series that I would have given it to, but I'm going to go like a full 10 on the Loki variants.
Jeez. Okay, so you go with a 5 then, or are you going to go above the scale?
It's out of 5.
No, really. Like this is a perfect score for me. I don't know that I could have asked for more out of a single episode.
Yeah, very cool. Okay, sweet, Justin.
I think that this episode does a lot in terms of, closing out certain things and answering questions while also setting up new ones. It is that sort of like transition into like the final act of this season. It's so hard when you have 6 episodes, right? Like, and the story has to be so concise, and you still want it to be, alluring, and you want that attention, especially when you're doing weekly. And they've done a really great job with, planting seeds and in the first 3 episodes, and destroy it, tear it down, and rebuild something new. And I think that's what this episode does really well. So for that reason, I think I'd give it 4.3 out of 5 Loki variants.
Okay. All right. Kevin, how about yourself? You going to do an awkward number like Justin always does?
No, you've got to always give the decimal point. No. Round numbers are too easy. But last week I was really disappointed by Loki's actions. And I said, to myself, if they're justified in this episode, then I might look back on that episode a little more fondly. And I really don't think they were in this episode. I don't think they're going to go back and justify why Loki just decided to be a douchebag on that train and almost get them killed. Like, I honestly saw him in this episode sitting there ready to die as just, I screwed up and now we're toast. So I don't think I can look back last week and forgive those errors. But this week, I think they did so much right. And it was just such an interesting episode in terms of everything that was happening, everything we found out, especially as we finished the episode with the post-credit sequence. It's like, oh, there's only 2 episodes left to explore what you're going to open up. Right. But I just think it did such a good job. Again, I go back to, they never should have teased that she wasn't a Loki, because she so clearly is a Loki, and that was a waste of time, in my opinion, to even make you wonder whether she was or not, just to pay it off the next episode. But anyways, great episode, great action, and great story development, both moving into this episode and then forward. I'm going to give it the same score as Justin, a nice solid 4.3 out of 5 Loki variants.
Very cool.
I think you gotta go easy on Loki. If Dr. Drew were watching, he would say that Loki had to hit rock bottom in episode 3 before he could really, accept change.
Fair enough.
Yep.
Fair enough.
Yeah, or rock bottom had to literally fall down as a planet on him.
And so maybe that might have been the first time that this Loki, at least, was that close to death, right? Right? He might have seen himself in a different timeline die, but who knows if this Loki has ever been that close. And so with the planet coming to crash into his moon and end his life, maybe he did learn from that,
Maybe, listen, getting slammed around by a Hulk also feels like your life might be ending pretty soon.
Now you know how it feels.
But listen, for myself, I think I love this episode. Honestly, it's up there for me with the first 2 episodes. Is one of my favorites so far. And I know we're only 4 episodes into this, but with 2 more to go, I really enjoyed the pace that they progress these characters. And to me, it didn't feel rushed, and it was understandable, and even natural in some instances for them to act this way given the circumstances. So, I loved the book ending of seeing, the Lokis enter the TVA by armed guard in a sense of sort of they're being rescued, and then seeing them at the end in the same position, but now they're on their way to the death. It's just very poetic. And I think it's smart little moments in the writing throughout this series and throughout this episode that I enjoy so much. And so it has action, it had character development, and it does what Marvel does best, which got me really excited to see what's next, while still remaining an interesting and engaging story on its own. I think this episode on its own right does that. So for all these reasons, I'm gonna go with Matt on this one. I'm gonna give this 5 Loki variants out of 5, or as he said, 10. I'll give it 10 out of 5.
I meant 5. I wasn't paying attention.
No, it's okay. Honestly,
it's okay.
Matt, these two rarely pay attention to my scales, so don't worry about that.
Well.
But let's get to our Loki perspective. As we reach the end of this episode, we of course have to discuss that mid-credit scene. So let's get into it. By the way, there is a mid-credit scene. By the way, if you're still listening and you haven't somehow watched that yet, now is your chance to pause this and then come right back when you've seen it. Okay. Has everybody's watched it? Yeah. Okay. You guys all watched it? Okay. So Loki awakens in a strange world and looks up to see 3 more Loki variants. One is a child Loki. Another is a Loki that holds a Thor hammer. We also see an older Loki wearing a classic Loki suit. Oh, and also, sorry, I guess there is a fourth. There's a freaking alligator Loki sitting there
I believe
in
it's
Kid
a
Loki's
crocodile.
lap. Or it might be a crocodile.
No, I don't. I'm not sure which one it is.
You'll have to write in and tell us whether it's a crocodile or alligator Loki. But I need to know more now. More than ever, what is your low-key perspective on what's going to happen next? Matt, let's get you to start us off right here.
Well, one, I mean, where was my Jim Carrey holding his Loki mask in that? If you're really going to bring all the variants together.
That would have been really cool. Yeah,
Jim Carrey as a Loki variant? That needs to be a thing. My God.
For sure.
Yeah, I know you said it earlier about the pruning. I was totally fooled. Like, they duped me on the seriousness of the pruning early on. And I did think like, oh, you're disintegrating people, like, and carelessly too.
Yeah.
So I bought into it. So I was shocked in both scenes. And then like, certainly after the Loki one, I'm like, okay, wait a second. They can't have just killed off like 2 of the main characters in this episode.
Yeah.
So I wasn't surprised to see some sort of, coming back. So I don't know, like, what it did start me thinking about is, all of the color schemes in some of the magic or the mechanisms. So, the pruning is often yellow, right? Which is the same color that those doors that open up are. So I'm like, okay, so maybe there's something about
time,
like that's bringing them somewhere or like, dumping them somewhere.
Yeah.
So, I mean, obviously that looks like what's happened. And, they sort of answer that he's not dead. So they are pretty clear about what's going on there. So, I don't know. I don't know where they're going with this particular component, but I thought it was just such an awesome, like that's one of the better Easter eggs I've seen at the end of a credit scene.
Yeah.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, that's 100%. I agree with that. I'm wondering if this is a place where it's either a place where all the prune go or just Loki's, one of the two, right?
Or is like what Matt said. Are they all Loki?
Yeah, no, but that's what I mean,
TVA?
right? Like if Loki is the big one that's behind all of this, is the Wizard of Oz is the one pulling all the strings behind all of this, or it's taking place in the confines of his mind. That's a really interesting theory, and I think that's obviously that still keeps it very central and focused on the character that the show's about. But I do feel like this is the perfect avenue to be introducing someone like Kang the Conqueror. I don't want to get too Mephisto with it because we know how that all kind of happens. But
I mean, he's in the show. He's in the stained glass window, dude. So
yeah, he was referenced. But if anything, throughout this episode, I was drawing parallels to WandaVision and just the idea of the multiverse and the Darkhold, all that magic there. And obviously we know the multiverse is going to play a part in Doctor Strange, and Mark Waldron, who's written this, is writing that. Like maybe I'm looking way too deep, which is what we do, I guess. But I'm wondering if there's just some interesting parallels that are being drawn here, because there is a distinction between time magic and sort of other magic, and I think that the color perception is very much something to talk about.
Ooh, interesting.
I'm gonna agree with you, just in that. I mean, while I don't know much about his character, I do think this is how they bring in Kang the Conqueror. Having cast him already, we know that this character is coming, and his whole deal is with time and manipulation and changing events past and present. And this just seems like the perfect setup and introduction to that sort of big bad that we might get over the next, 10 movies before there's, sort of a climax and a showdown. And I think Ravonna knows everything, and she is either his daughter or his subservient in some regard, and she is doing his bidding, in the natural eye of the human world, if you will, right? Like she's controlling everything while he's pulling the strings from behind the scenes, because yes, she's obviously just a pawn for somebody far more important. And I just think it's either that or it is the Loki theory where he's running the show and I don't know. I prefer to think
It
of it
could be
almost
Mephisto
bigger.
for all we know.
It's not Mephisto. But just really quickly, I do what I think we're seeing with these Lokis here is either this is a prison for everyone who's been pruned or just the Loki
Lokis.
variants.
Yeah.
But there's got to be a reason they're waiting for Loki specifically, right? Because he's just
true.
another Loki in that
Yes.
case. So he's got to be integral in some regard for them to have all been almost like sitting there waiting for this specific.
That's a
and
good
I
point.
hope that means he is the one and they need the original Loki to escape or do whatever they want to do.
Yeah, it's interesting. So now that there's no timekeepers, right? So that's sort of off the table. So there's a couple of things that you might have taken for granted earlier that I'm like, okay, so why don't Infinity Stones work there? Like, who is convincing all of these TVA members that they don't, they were created to work at the TVA? Right, so it's magic. So like, it's interesting. And I kept, looking at, that sort of yellow thing. Like, even if you look at the Mind Stone, right? So if I read something online, I have like a clip here where it's like it grants the user powerful mental abilities like the power to subjugate the minds of others, bending them to the will of others, as well as project the user's consciousness to a higher plane of existence. The stone was also said to greatly increase the intelligence of those capable of wielding it, as shown in the case of Loki. So, to me, I'm like, okay, so like if they're just in like a different plane of existence, which is maybe just like a mental projection, do Infinity Stones really work there? Can you bring them with you there if it's just your consciousness that's there? And if these are just sort of the consciousness of other people. And I look at like that yellow color is used all over the place. Yeah. So like to me, there's something there with all of that.
Yeah. I'm feeling that vibe because the red is the reality. And, we've seen that red power, already get established, and it does associate with magic as well, right? Like from where we've seen it. So like, what if this is the ultimate Wizard of Oz where like another magician is behind all of this, right? That's really creating all of this, right? Like it's creating the Matrix.
And the Wizard of Oz takes place in Dorothy's head.
Exactly. Oh yeah. Whoa. Oh, dude, that's awesome.
Okay, hold on. Okay, I've been waiting too long here. First off, I love seeing Thor Loki. That was cool. He had a giant wrench hammer, and that's neat. And also, if you look closely, you can see that the destroyed Avengers Tower in the background of that moment. So either this is an alternate timeline in which New York was actually wiped out instead of saved, like in the first Avengers movie, or this is New York, like maybe post Thanos snap, right? And like both of those moments would be very much apocalypses. So that's a great way to hide out from the TVA for all these Lokis, this army of Lokis. Obviously, the next episode is going to be that penultimate episode where almost everything is explained. We get to really dig into like Loki understanding more stuff before they move to the episode where he has to do the thing that's described to him in the next episode. So with all that said, I'm going to rant a little bit here. Give me a second. We're absolutely going to get an army of Lokis, and maybe they all get wiped out by whoever the big bad is in the series. But I think that, and Matt, you already kind of mentioned this, I think the person who's behind all this is Mobius. And I don't think it's the Mobius that we know. I think it's maybe a Mobius variant who Ravonna is actually in a relationship with. But she knows that the Mobius that she's in love with is flawed, and so that's why she flirts with like the good Mobius from time to time, because she like really wants to be with good Mobius, but she knows that that's not the
that might
thing
be
that she needs
crazy
to do.
enough to actually be true,
right?
Holy
And then hold up. Okay, wait. So which means that the TVA might actually be okay with other variants existing as long as they don't affect the sacred timeline, or that these variants aren't from other timelines per se, but are actual variants on the same timeline, but in different multiverses. So I know I just said like 19 different theories there, but I'm just saying I love, Matt, what you've kind of brought in here, because we're going off on like, okay, is this Loki that's behind all this? Is this Kang the Conqueror that's behind all this? Is it Ravonna? Is it Miss Minutes? Who is it? I think at the end of the day, it could be a mixture of that. We could have a situation where, maybe Kang saw that the Loki really did achieve his purpose in taking over the world as a good person as a hero. And so maybe his goal is to end and get rid of every single Loki as the ultimate conqueror. So maybe it's a mix of all of this stuff, you guys.
Someone's got to benefit from his failures, right?
Right.
And if someone succeeds, then it's not really, if Sylvie's the one that's the good one, right? It's not really following suit to the failures of Loki, right? So,
dude,
it's a variant.
I don't know, man. I don't know.
It's interesting.
I like the Mobius theory.
Yeah.
Right?
I don't know that I buy Mobius as the ultimate bad guy.
Imagine he's Mephisto. Wow.
Yeah,
all
but
along.
I do buy there being another agent that's him.
Yes. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like that makes sense.
I already saw that happen in
that poster
yeah.
about like thoroughly deleting your variants. That's
Yes.
him, right?
Yes.
And like also the you said poster. I thought you said coaster, but he didn't use a coaster in her office, and there's like multiple of those
There's
rings.
someone
and
else.
Clearly,
There's 100%
there's
someone
another
else. Yeah.
Mobius that's doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, like I'm with Matt here. Like I just wouldn't buy Mobius as the big bad for something
Especially
this
when Owen
significant.
Wilson. Yeah.
Like it would kind of be like Agatha at the end of it just being, that's it. It's just Agatha. It was just Agatha all along. And that did kind of feel a little flat, right? With how easy she was to beat. Like, once you've introduced Thanos, man, every bad guy has to be at least close to that powerful, if not more powerful. So, just an evil Owen Wilson, I would have a really hard time buying that, I think.
Yeah. Owen Wilson as the bad guy. That was interesting. I could definitely see him like dressing up in like some sort of, Zoolander style outfit and being like, I'm Mephisto, right? Like that would be insane.
Let's go.
But also, if he's a variant, he doesn't have to look like Owen Wilson.
No, for sure.
There you
That's
go.
true. It could be Luke
you
Wilson.
go.
There you go.
It could be Luke. There we go.
Luke Wilson in here.
If Luke Wilson isn't in this show, it's a failed opportunity.
Oh, I'd love it if he just cameoed. That would be great.
Yeah.
It's an interesting idea though. If there's like another Mobius that's out there that's actually pulling the strings.
Any other low-key perspectives before we wrap up? That's it. All of our minds have imploded now.
I'm
with
just
all
looking
these
forward to
theories.
seeing where this goes because it's the penultimate next episode. So
That's it.
I might
And
wake
we
up
know
at
those
3
are
in the
the best
morning and
ones.
watch it. So
Yeah. Very cool. All right. Well, listen, that is it. Before we go into our normal closing statements, Matt, did you want to take a moment to plug anything that you want our listeners to check out during their next Nexus event?
The only thing I would even mention is a good friend of mine, Jamie Dew, has a podcast called The Do-Over. He's actually got a bunch of different podcasts, but that's where I had my first opportunity to be on a podcast. Also, my first opportunity to have a podcast go wrong.
Oh no!
Which I think is a rite of passage in podcasting.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
But yeah, I think he's got some amazing stuff, and I would highly recommend checking out The Do-Over.
nice.
Very cool. Awesome. Well, we'll have to give your episode a listen and make sure that we get. It did actually happen, though, right?
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay. It's not.
It happened. It's
It's
there.
not
Just
stuck to a
a
time
different
door.
timeline, yeah.
Yeah, on
Yeah,
a different
I think
timeline.
I'm on two different episodes.
Very cool. Okay, well, listen, we'll have to pop some of those episodes into the show notes. Justin will put a link in there for our lovely listeners. Listen, we hope you enjoyed this low-key altering episode of Watch Club. And if you did, make sure to subscribe to us wherever you like to listen to podcasts, if you haven't already. And if you want to write into the show with your thoughts on this episode or your predictions for the series that we cover here on Watch Club, well, listen, you don't need to get rescued/arrested from an apocalypse, take down the TVA, fall in love with yourself, and unveil the truth about space lizards who are actually robots. Instead, Justin, can you let our listeners know where and when they can write into the show?
They can reach us at wearegeekcentric@gmail.com. That's wearegeekcentric@gmail.com.
Very cool. And also, if you don't know, we have more episodes, from the Geekcentric podcast. Like, for instance, we have another Watch Club that we have going on right now, where you can join Justin, Darcy, and I for our Star Wars, the Bad Batch reviews every single week. And we also have our regular episodes of the Geekcentric podcast with our latest episode out real soon, where we're going to share our thoughts on Disney's latest animated series, Monsters at Work. So go give that a listen and a nice 5-star rating because you are burdened with glorious purpose. Listen, Justin, Kevin, and Matt, thank you so much for joining me for today's apocalyptic Watch Club. And as we say,
For all time.
Always.